Welcome to this explainer. Today, we're diving headfirst into a pretty amazing biological mystery: why it's just so incredibly hard to actually change our lives, and how our very own brains inadvertently trap us in these invisible, repetitive loops. But look, we're not just here to dwell on the problem. We're going to lay out a really precise scientific roadmap for rewiring your mind and taking back control of your biological destiny. Here is our roadmap for the journey today. First, we'll cover the human-computer program. Then we'll look at the cycle of sameness and move right into the anatomy of a personality. After that, we'll explore the stress response and wrap up with rewiring for the future. Okay, let's dive into this. So, part 1, the human-computer program, uncovering your automated brain. As we age, our brains become these highly predictable, incredibly efficient machines. Now, that's a total marvel of biology, but it's also our absolute biggest hurdle. To really get why change is so tough, you have to understand this staggering statistic. By the time we hit 35 years old, 95% of who we are is essentially a completely memorized set of behaviors. We're talking emotional reactions, unconscious habits, hardwired attitudes, beliefs, you name it. All of this is functioning exactly like a computer program, just running quietly in the background of your life. So what does that actually mean for us? Well, it means that a tiny, tiny fraction, only 5% of your mind is actually conscious. Imagine someone saying with that 5% conscious mind, I want to be healthy, I want to be happy, I want to be totally free. They mean it, right? But they are fighting a massive uphill battle. Why? Because the body is already running on this entirely automated software program that controls the other 95%. You're literally trying to override a supercomputer using the processing power of a pocket calculator. Now, just to put this into perspective, think about the sheer volume of stuff going on in our heads. We have somewhere between 60,000 to 70,000 thoughts in a single day. That's huge. But here's the catch, and it's a big one. 90% of those thoughts are the exact same thoughts we had the day before. If you believe your thoughts shape your destiny, but your thoughts are basically just a rerun of yesterday's episode, well, your life simply isn't going to change. Which brings us to part 2, the cycle of sameness. Trapped in the familiar past. Let's make this super relatable and look at how these repetitive thoughts actually play out in our day-to-day lives. Just think about your own morning routine today. You wake up and boom, immediately your mind starts recalling its problems. And those problems, they're really just memory circuits anchored entirely in the past. So you grab your phone, you check texts, social media, the news, and now you're perfectly connected to everything that's already known in your life. You get out of bed on the exact same side, make the same coffee, drive the same route to work, and see the exact same people who push the exact same emotional buttons. Doing this day in and day out strips us of our free will. We essentially surrender to a program, connecting ourselves entirely to a familiar, known past. And this brilliantly illustrates the biological cascade that keeps us so stuck. It's like a domino effect. The same thought leads to the same choice leads to the same behavior, that behavior creates the exact same experience, which then produces the exact same emotion. A habit is really just a redundant set of automatic, unconscious thoughts, behaviors, and emotions that we've acquired through sheer repetition. So when you wake up and instantly recall your past problems, you instantly feel unhappy or stressed. You're starting your day with your entire state of being anchored in the past. And the inevitable result of living in a familiar past? A completely predictable future. Moving on to section 3, anatomy of a personality, how fleeting moments become who we are. Okay, so it all starts with how we react to our environment. When you have a highly emotional experience, your brain zeroes in on the cause, takes a quick snapshot, and bam, creates a long-term memory. We all have emotional reactions, for sure. But the real trap is what science calls the refractory period. That's just the time it takes your emotional state to return to normal baseline. If you let an emotional reaction last for hours or days, well, we call that a mood. Someone asks what's wrong and you say, oh, this thing happened to me 5 days ago. Now, if you keep that exact same emotional reaction going for weeks or months, it calcifies into a temperament. Why is he so bitter? Oh, something happened 9 months ago. And if you keep it running for years on end, it hardwires into a permanent personality trait. If we don't actively snap out of these loops, an unchecked reaction from one single bad day can literally become our entire identity. Which leads us to part 4, the stress response, the biological cost of our routines. Living in this repetitive, past-driven loop has some really dire biological consequences. Biologically speaking, stress is simply defined as the moment your brain and body are knocked out of balance or out of homeostasis. The stress response itself isn't evil. It's just what the body innately does to return itself back to order. It's a built-in survival mechanism. But we have to look at how nature intended this to work versus how we humans actually misuse it. In nature, organisms are built to tolerate short-term stress. A deer gets chased by coyotes, it outruns them, the event ends, and it just goes peacefully back to grazing. Boom, threat over, back to normal. But humans, because we have this massive, highly evolved neocortex, we can turn on the stress response by thought alone. There's no physical predator outside your cave. Instead, it's just your coworker sitting next to you. And all day long, you are pumping those exact same survival chemicals through your body just because they're pushing your emotional buttons. And the scientific reality of this is pretty stark. The hormones of stress actually downregulate genes. That means they literally suppress healthy cell function and create disease. Honestly, no organism in nature is designed to live in an emergency mode for an extended period of time. When you turn on that stress response, and you just can't turn it off because you're constantly reliving the past in your head, you are actively heading toward disease. Our thoughts, quite literally, can make us sick. Now for the good news. Part 5, Rewiring for the Future, Taking Back Control of Your Mind. Look, we do not have to wait for a total crisis, a trauma, or a scary diagnosis to finally wake up and change. We can actually learn and change in a state of joy and inspiration. So the crucial point is this incredible quirk of human neurology. If you close your eyes and mentally rehearse an action and you are truly present in that moment, the brain absolutely does not know the difference between what you're imagining and what you are actually experiencing in the physical world. By mentally rehearsing who you want to be, you begin to physically install new neurological hardware in your brain. You start making it look like the event has already happened. This creates a really profound shift. Your brain is no longer just a historical record of the past. It suddenly becomes a map to the future. Now, the hardest part of this whole process is teaching our body, emotionally, what that future will feel like ahead of the actual experience. But if you keep at it, if you keep priming it, firing and wiring those new circuits, that new neurological hardware eventually becomes your new, seamless, automated software program. Think of it exactly like tending a garden. First, you've got to get your hands dirty. You have to get rid of the weeds, pull out the dead plants from last year, and remove the heavy rocks, which are your old emotional blocks. You have to tenderize that soil to make room before you can plant anything new. But a quick warning, the moment you step into that river of change and actually make a different choice, it is going to feel super uncomfortable. Your body has been conditioned to be the mind for decades. And trust me, it will throw an absolute tantrum. It'll whisper, "Let's just start tomorrow," or "This doesn't feel right." The body desperately wants to return to familiar territory. You absolutely have to push past that discomfort to retire the old self. So let's bring this all together. We've seen that obsessing over our problems and living in the stress of the past literally downregulates genes and creates disease. So if it's scientifically proven that our thoughts can make us sick, is it possible that our thoughts could actually make us well? The biological and neurological answer is absolutely yes. By taking back that 95% of your automated mind and intentionally planting the garden of your future, you can quite literally rewire who you are. So I'll leave you with this. What familiar thoughts are you willing to let go of today to ensure your future isn't just a rerun of your past? Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer. I really hope this helps you take control of your own biology.